All right, we're still in Deuteronomy. We're in chapter 28. And what this basically is a contract between God and Israel. And the first 14 verses are blessings. But they're conditional on the obedience of the people to what God tells them and are living according to his instructions. Same with a lot of the conditions we have to meet. But in exchange for his blessings, God expects them to represent him clearly to all the peoples of the earth, just as he expects us to do. We still serve the same God. We just have Jesus Christ as a mediator now. So, we'll start in chapter 28. It says, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. Blessed shalt thou be in the city, blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shalt be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, the fruit of thy cattle, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out." So everywhere you are, you're going to be blessed. "The Lord shall cause thine enemies to rise up against thee, to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. And we have seen examples of this. We won't get into them, but that has happened for them after Joshua took over. "The Lord shall command the blessings upon thee in thy storehouses, and all that thou settest thine hand unto." That'd be great to be successful in everything you undertook. "He shall bless thee in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The Lord shall establish thee a holy people unto himself, as he has sworn unto thee, if thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord thy God and walk in his ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee." Remember when they went to Jericho, and Rahab, she told them, she said, "We've heard about what your God did in Egypt, And the Lord shall make thee plenteous in goods, in the fruit of thy body, fruit of thy cattle, fruit of thy ground, in the land which the Lord sware unto the fathers to give thee. The Lord shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his season, and to bless all the work of thine hand. And thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow." Proverbs tells us that the borrower is servant to the lender, to be careful of that. "And the Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. If thou hearken unto the commandments of the Lord thy God, which I command thee this day to observe and to do them. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them." So that's the conditions. If you meet these conditions, it's going to go well with you. But he spends a lot of time talking about the cursings. Verses 15 through 68 are the cursings. We don't want no part of that, if we can help it. It says, "But if it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body, fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke, and all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. The Lord shall smite thee with a consumption, with a fever, with inflammation, with extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and with and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. Blasting is just a blight of crops. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee until thou be destroyed. He likes using this till you're gone, destroyed. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed unto all the kingdoms of the earth. And thy carcass shall be meat unto all fowls of the air. I like the way he puts that in there, because in Genesis, man was given dominion over the animals. But here, your carcass is going to be meat until all fowls of the air, and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. And that means to scare them or run them off. The Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch. Therefore thou cannot not be healed. The botch of Egypt was boils, leprosy. Emerods is hemorrhoids. And there's an interesting story about that in the book of Judges. Find it. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. Thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. Thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. And there shall be no might in thine hand. All these things will take place, and you have no power to control any of it. You're powerless. You're just going to have to accept your punishment. The fruit of thine land and all thy labor shall be a nation which thou knowest not. Eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed away, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. The Lord shall smite thee in the knees and in the legs with a sore botch that cannot be healed, from the sole of thy foot to the top of thy head. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king. Now right here, there has been no king in Israel to this point. God did not want a king. But as we know, later on, they get a king through Saul. So he knows the future. He wouldn't be telling them that he's going to take care of the king here if there wasn't going to be a king. The Lord shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee. And he's saying that this king is set over them by them, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and thou shalt serve other gods, wood and stone. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine, nor gather the grapes, for the worm shall eat them. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coasts, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil, for thine olives shall cast his fruit. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. All thy trees and fruit of thy land shall the locust consume. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he hath destroyed thee. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, that shall not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. And who he's talking about right here, this has happened. This is the Roman Empire. It was known as the Iron Kingdom under Titus. Their symbol was the eagle. And I'm sure there were some smart people in Israel when this came about, saw what was happening and thought of this. Had to. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustedest throughout all thy land, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. Okay. When you had a city back then, any spare labor or time you had was to add to the walls so you'd have protection. Well, in 40, I believe it was around 40 AD, 3 days before Passover, the Roman army shows up and surrounds Jerusalem. All right? When the Roman army showed up, it was bad times because they were prepared to stay 20 plus years. So you were cut off from all outside access. I'm sure there would have been some wells in the city, but any fresh water they would pollute, so you couldn't use that. And I read some history from, I don't know if y'all have read any of Josephus, but he was an eyewitness to this. Josephus was a very arrogant man, but he was a good note keeper. He said that at first they broke through the first two walls rather quickly, but this siege lasted 4 months. So unless you had 4 months of whatever you needed in your house, how long can you last? According to him, murder, famine, and cannibalism was rampant in the city. And it gets into that a little bit here. I'm sorry, 25 plus years, not 20. They were prepared to stay 25 plus years. And they had the resources to do it because they could keep sending people in. So that happened 3 days before Passover in 40 AD. 4 months later, Jerusalem fell. They destroyed the temple, carried people off. And we'll get into a little more history here. But here's where it gets pretty serious. It says, and thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee in the siege and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children which he shall leave. So that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children, whom he shall eat. Because he hath nothing left him in the siege, and in the straitness wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in all thy gates. The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, toward her son, toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children which she shall bear, for she shall eat them for want of all things, secretly in the siege and straitness wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in the gates. This has happened. It happened. It's history. God told them if they didn't pay attention, they would eat their children. And they did. I've not ever been that hungry, but I don't ever want to be that hungry. It happened. And there is a story about it, and I cannot remember where. Maybe Raymond, Tony, Fred, somebody can remember, but it's in the siege, and they had drawn lots or something to decide whose child they would eat on what day. And when it come time for this to eat this lady's child, she had hid him away, and there was a big fight over it. I don't remember. But it gets your attention because that's so far removed from us, we can't imagine. But it's happened. And that was just the beginning of their pain. Let's go on. If thou shalt not observe to do all the words of the law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, the Lord thy God, then the Lord will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sickness, and long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague, which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. And ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught. And ye shall be plucked up off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease. Before we go any further right here, most scholars agree that this is the Holocaust that took place to the Jews during World War II. Has anybody ever read the Diary of Anne Frank? If you haven't, read it, find an audio book, listen to it. She was a young Jew in the Netherlands that spent 2 years hiding from the Nazis. And that's where it's saying, they were afraid all the time that they were going to be discovered or captured. And I'm not going to give away the end of the book, but you need to, it'll give you a different perspective on this. 2 years. You know, and they believe statistically 1/3 of the Jewish population died in the Holocaust. 1/3. But if we go over to Zechariah, there's a prophecy here. Zechariah 13. And there's a prophecy here that has yet to come to pass because God is not done with Israel. They are still his chosen people. And they have a place, but boy, they're going to have to pay to get there. Zechariah 13, pick up about verse 7. It says, "Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, and against the man that is my fellow, saith the Lord of hosts, smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered, and I will turn mine hand upon the little ones. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein." So 2/3 of them is going to die. "And I will bring the third part through the fire, and will refine them as silver is refined, and I will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, and I will hear them. I will say, it is my people, and they shall say, the Lord is my God." And most all these scholars agree that this is going to happen in the future. It hasn't happened yet. But that's saying 2/3 of them are going to die. If you read in Revelation, the best that I can understand it, the Jewish people are going to have to go through it all. They're going to be tried. And 1/3 of them is going to make it. I could be wrong, but it doesn't look good for them. So verse 65 says, "Among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest. But the Lord shall give thee a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even." So in the morning you're going to wish it was even. "And in the evening thou shalt say, would God if it were morning." So in the evening you're going to wish it was morning. "For the fear of thine heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. They shall see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." That's some serious cursings. And historically, we can see some of them have came to pass. And there's still a future that holds some pretty dark things for them. You know, I've never understood the Jewish system. You know, you had to have the temple to be cleansed from your sins. Well, they don't have no temple, so how are they living by the law without the temple? That makes no sense to me. They're still looking for the Messiah. He came, but they're still looking for him. I don't understand that blindness unless it's the blindness that God has put upon them. I don't know. Look at America today. I mean, everything's in a wreck, comparatively speaking to what we're used to. Or is there some judgment being poured out on us? Possibly. And I would say very likely. What does the future hold? Probably a lot worse. If you look at things, you know, the book tells us that a house divided cannot stand, and if our nation is not divided, then it's never been divided. Sally have brought up a thing as we was listening to on the way to church that UPS is not going to ship gun parts. And anything that they have in their system can be confiscated and destroyed. That's somebody else's property. That's not their property. But I read an article a couple of days ago that says if you put your money in the bank, it is no longer your money. You have given possession of it to someone else. We live in some interesting times. Very interesting times. And when you read this, and it reads like history, and you can see that history, I mean, the Roman army shows up 3 days before Passover and lays siege. He told them it would happen. He just didn't tell them when. If you turn from me, this is going to happen. Brother Raymond says something every now and again that I hear him say. Any nation that turns from God will be turned into hell. Is that? I don't remember where that's at, but it's in the book. Yeah. I mean, we're pretty blessed here, but you go into other parts of the country. I seen a thing yesterday. A lady who was working at an O'Reilly auto parts store. Guy drug her over the counter. She was working there, drug her over the counter and started beating her. She shot him. But if they have a DA that's not sympathetic towards self-defense, she will be prosecuted to the nth. And they got it all on video. I watched the video. But why would a grown man drag a woman across an auto parts counter? I mean, this just shows you how mean people are getting. They want somebody to lash out at. Interesting. We're pretty blessed here for the most part. I did see where they having some protests down on State Street yesterday, and they disabled the Facebook comments and stuff on it because it was stirring it. And I don't know what they were protesting. I have no idea. Was it the Roe v. Wade? To Virginia. Right. I figured as much, but I didn't know. I figured they would move. Sally and I talked about that a few weeks ago. Hey, but we have an expected end. I don't know what's between here and there, but we do have an expected end. But it's going to get interesting. It's going to get very interesting. But the same God here that allowed their children to be eaten is the same God that we serve. He expects something. If you're claiming his name, he expects something. Let's pick up in 29. We can get a few verses in anyway. These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. And Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, Ye have seen all the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh, and unto all his servants, and to all his land. And that blows my mind there. I mean, they saw what God did and what he was capable of, but they were stiff-necked, wouldn't listen, so they had to wander around in the desert for 40 years till that generation died off because they doubted God, that he would deliver them. The great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles. Yet the Lord hath not given you a heart to perceive, and eyes to see, and ears to hear, unto this day. And I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxen old upon you, and the shoe is not waxen old upon thy foot. You have not eaten bread, neither have you drunk wine or strong drink, that you might know that I am the Lord thy God. We'll stop right there. And that's always fascinated me too. They wandered around for 40 years, but God kept them shoes and clothes and food. And their shoes didn't wear out and their clothes didn't wear out. And like I said, when Joshua picks up here, they do pretty good for a while, and then they don't. Anybody got any questions or comments before we close out? I hope I ain't put you to sleep too bad this morning.